Alright guys, this is a 2008 Mitsubishi Outlander 2.4 with the dual overhead cams. Now my job here is to replace the starter and the valve cover gasket. The problem is, to get to the starter, it's down behind the intake manifold. So I don't know if you can see it, but down there is the starter. You can see that motor down there. Shine a light to it. But that's the starter. I look from under the car and there's no way to get it out from behind that because it's tucked in behind the intake manifold. So this intake manifold has to come off in order to take that starter out to replace it. And in order to take this thing off, you gotta take the entire cooling passages along with it out. So this hose comes off, two bolts, one up here, one below that, and then there's another bracket bolted down to the flywheel housing down there, and then underneath there's another bracket that holds this piece to the flywheel housing. All 12mm bolts that has to come off. And then you start taking off the bolts that hold the manifold, and then this whole thing will slide out, and then you can access the starter. I'll get back to you as soon as I pull this out. You'll see another shot of it. Alright guys, I got the intake manifold off. As you can see, the most difficult part when you're pulling that manifold off is this main wire that goes to the starter likes to hook onto it. So you gotta like wiggle it sideways. Don't forget to disconnect that and the hose that goes to this bottom piece here, as well as the top. And all of that had to come off. And there's your starter right there. It's only held on by two bolts. One on top there. Put this flashlight in. One right there. And then the other one right there. Those two bolts holds that starter. And of course, take the main wire off and the signal wire for the solenoid, and you can get your starter, replace it, and work your way backwards to put the intake manifold back when you're done placing the starter. One thing I forgot to mention for the 2008 Mitsubishi Outlander 2.4 dual overhead cam, when you're taking off the intake manifold, you take the dipstick off. Then there's the bolts, of course, that hold the manifold on. The stud bolts have washers with a nut. The nut is not attached to the washer, so when you take the nut off, don't forget to get the washer out. I use a magnet. Where's my magnet? Well, I use a magnet. This is my magnet to get the washer and the nuts out, and the bolts if it's difficult. Very useful tool. Get yourself one. And the bottom end of the manifold, intake manifold, is held on by a bolt, 12mm bolt. From underneath it bolts on to this under the manifold, and the other one bolts on right there from the side. So don't forget to take that off. And then another one underneath is there, 12mm, 12mm, 12mm there, and 12mm there. Three holding two brackets on the right and underneath the manifold there. And of course, you gotta disconnect all the wire harness out of the way to get it all out. So that's the 2008 Mitsubishi Outlander 2.4 dual overhead cam starter replacement. It's a pain in the ass. I don't know why they couldn't make it easier, where the starter was further down lower, where we don't have to take the manifold off to get to it. There's no way you can get that starter off without removing the intake manifold. This is the only way to do it.